Complication is not depth. There are many games on shelves whose primary virtue is the thickness of their rulebook. There is an assumption that the more rules that you cram into a game, the deeper that game will be, as if the huge mountain you have to climb to learn the bloody thing is the game itself. Often though, these games only offer the illusion of depth, the extensive rules hiding a game that only extends 6 inches below the surface. So after a couple of plays, you put it back on your shelf and its wonderful art and the memory of its intrusive pieces pick at your attention when you pass it, but you don't pull it out again, because you know somewhere, in your cerebrum, you know that complication isn't depth. The great designers in this hobby, Rainer Knizia, Stefan Feld, Uwe Rosenberg, know the true depth in games comes from the judicious deployment of clever mechanisms that, maybe counterintuitively, all of the extraneous tracks and forest-killing piles of cards distract from the depth of the game. That you need to design a game, not simply drop a load of mechanisms into a bucket and then pour them on the table. They understand that there needs to be something beneath the beautiful art and flashy bits. Martin Wallace understands this. Martin is a true titan of the board game world, a gnarly old professional that has clambered to the top of the analog game world. He understands that a game has to be engineered to deliver an experience. He also understands that the players need to have agency. They need to orient their own path through the game. In Bloodstones, he's designed a game that uses the players to generate the delicious randomness that games thrive on. A game whose outcome will be determined not only by the actions the players take, but in their ability to anticipate what their opponents will do. Also, Bloodstones has a classic feel, a hands-off approach that allows players to express themselves in their play. Bloodstones feels like a game made by someone who understands his medium and has leveraged that understanding to build a great game. Now that may be a spoiler, but stick around to find out why it's great. In Bloodstones, players take on the roles of various tribes seeking supremacy in the standard fantasy land of Thal. These include the Dragon Riders, who marshal giant flying lizards to devastating effects, the Horse Lords, who are masters of strategy and rule the plains, the Hill Folk, who can conquer mountains, and the Necromancers, who can raise their opponents' troops from the dead and use them as their own. Every faction has their own special tweaks and abilities, but Bloodstones is not a wholly asymmetrical game like Root. The difference in the factions are in their special powers, not in their fundamental mechanisms. On a player's turn, they can build units, move them, and if they end up in enemy territory, can have a fight. Combat here is quick and elegant. Players draw numbered dominoes from a bag, add the numbers to the strength of their units on a region, and whoever has the highest number wins. The winner then scores points, and the defeated faction loses a unit and must withdraw to a friendly territory. Then the players can build villages. These offer greater flexibility in deploying forces, but are also the main engine for scoring in the game. Your forces are held in a bag that they get drawn from. When the bag is empty, you put your discarded forces back in the bag to play again. You also score 1 point for each village you have on the board, so building them is essential. Your budding real estate empire is tempered by the fact your opponents can capture these villages though and turn them into points for themselves. The balance between building villages and not overextending yourself is a crucial factor in Bloodstones. When every player has gone through their tiles 3 times in a 2-player game and twice in all other player counts, the player with the most points wins. Bloodstones feels like a throwback, and that isn't meant as a sly dig either. As board games enter their Baroque period, Bloodstones is a game that deploys only the right amount of rules needed to deliver an engaging experience, and that is hugely to its credit. There is very little explanation needed at the beginning of the game, and the rules here are understated and sensible. Essentially, they're there to facilitate the play, not to obscure it. Playing this game is not the challenge. Playing it well is. Games need to nudge players in certain directions, then allow their intuitions to kick in. The rules are not there to dictate to players how the game should be played. No one likes to feel railroaded in a game, but neither do they like to feel directionless and lost. Bloodstones strikes that balance perfectly with the special powers afforded to the different factions. These powers nudge you in certain directions, but give you enough leeway to decide how you want to conduct yourself. Should you attack early and often, or build up your forces for a large assault? Great gameplay is about feeling ownership over your own experience, and the powers in Bloodstones gives you that ownership. Also, they perform a wonderful alchemy. At first glance, many of the powers seem minor, like the Corsairs being able to withdraw across water. Play the game though, and you'll soon realise the value in these seemingly minor buffs, and the strength of these rules becomes more and more apparent. Basically, for all of the basic fantasy set dressing, Bloodstones is an old school game of combat where the challenge lies in choosing when to engage in that combat. The wonderful thing about Bloodstones though is that sometimes that decision is taken out of your hands by the people around the table. This is not a game of pacifism. This is a game of balancing serving your own ends while thwarting the ends of the other bastards around the table. This is where the heart of the game lies. Your opponents will try to halt your progress, and you need to keep an eye on their forces and their abilities to put pay to their plans. This is where the simplicity of the rules is a real masterstroke. All of the factions have their own special abilities, but they are not too numerous or arcane to prevent the other players from keeping track. Within 10 minutes of your first play, you understand your opponent's capabilities, then it's up to you to try and stop them. I cannot stress how much the relative simplicity of the rules is a strength here. It is this simplicity that allows you to clamber into the minds of your opponents and divine their intentions. This is a game of trying to work out what a pained expression or a faint smile can mean. Now, I don't usually focus on this aspect of games, but I have to mention the components here too. They are so striking that not to dwell on them would be negligent. Your forces are Baker-like dominoes that are wonderfully tactile and stack up nicely for the battle phase. The art on these tiles is great, but it's only printed on, so there's a chance that it could chip or fade with time. This is a special concern with the battle tiles, as they're used a lot in the game. The factions' pieces are held in decadent embroidered bags, and the maps are printed on faux silk. A novelty for sure, but also a great space-saving tool, as many more maps can fit in the box to accommodate the different player counts. This is vital, as the choice of the correct map is so important to a game of Bloodstones. Bloodstones really shines when players are on top of one another, forced to wreak havoc. We played one game on a map that was too big, which led players to nibble at each other rather than engage in full-blooded combat. Luckily, there are many maps in the box, and it's essential to pick one that is right for your player count. On player count, the game plays up to 6, but never make the mistake of assembling that many people. The downtime is horrendous and the game takes forever. It is perfect at 3 or 4. Even at a reasonable player count though, Bloodstones is not a short game, but if you choose the right map, you find yourself fully engaged for the 2.5 hours it takes to play. When it comes down to it, Bloodstones is a game that values gameplay over componentry and engagement over complexity, though it manages to be just complex enough and dazzle with its components. It is a game that is simple, but that simplicity empowers the player to take control of their own experience. I had a great time playing Bloodstones, and unless you're a dyed-in-the-wool adherent of multiplayer solitaire, I would venture that you'll have a great time too. Thank you for watching. You can like the video if you liked the video, subscribe to the channel, you can buy great 5G4D merch at somemeeple.com, and if you want to help these videos get made, you can back the show at patreon.com/5G4D. Thanks again for watching.